iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz.
I think, as wonderful as season one is, and I loved working on season one, I just think this era of musicals are some of the best in all of musical theater, right? Like they're complex, they're bold, they're stylistic, they're sexy, they're dark, they're gritty, and so there's so much more dimensionality in all of those shows than the kind of seemingly one-dimensional a lot of the previous source material was. So I think just getting to work on that, and I think it reflects all of our characters. I think we were almost like stereotypes in the first season, and to function off of Cecily and Keegan. But this season, we still are there to function off of them, but we all get to have our own kind of much more realized, fuller characters. And I think that was definitely a lot of fun to do this time around, to kind of get to play like a real character with a journey throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I definitely think that, in season one, all that era of musicals was all about, they were written in a time where you were looking for like a nice night out with your family or significant other. And then this newer wave of musicals was written at a time where they were trying to disrupt things, and it was trying to get messaging out, and there was a lot of political commentary. And so naturally, I think for both of us, that just felt much more, that's like the reason I wanted to get involved in the industry in the first place, was that feeling of like, ooh, like it's in my guts. Like this experience is like affecting me to the point where it's making me realize myself. And the older musicals just don't do that for me. So this is definitely by like far and away my favorite era. And it's really fun just to have kind of carte blanche permission to do whatever you want with these characters, because they're so over the top and campy and also human. It's very fun.
We thought it was going to be amazing, but we were like, oh my God, this is like a titanic task. Like, how are they going to pull this off, right? But it was super fun. I think the vibe and the energy and the colors and everything of season two, it's such a different season from season one. And I think people will dig it. And, for all non-theater nerds, I think that you always have a fun show to watch, that you don't have to like even musical theater.
I think also mostly because it's so such a complete departure from Schmigadoon. And if anything, in the world of acting, you want to have you want your career to be varied in some way. So for us to be under the same umbrella, the project be the same, but be able to go in a completely different direction is so exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just I enjoyed, I keep saying, like the sets and just all the looks and the locations, because we got to do a couple more this season, which was very fun.
We bring you to a very different world this time round, so we're hoping that all of our audience will come along with us and enjoy it.
Because initially, a lot of the discussions in the writers' room were, how do we make sense of this? Because we're in Victorian era, and we're in the 20s, and then we're in the 60s, and then we decided, it's a magical town. It can be whatever we want to. And so we decided to treat that as a strength instead of a challenge, and just embrace the fact that it was kind of nuts. And then it sort of started to clearly evolve. Okay, there are these three separate worlds, and we're gonna wouldn't it be fun if, Pippin met Sally Bowles? That would be great. And so started to have fun with mixing the worlds.
When we were doing both Talk to Daddy and Let's Get Naked, both those numbers, that whole era of Josh's life, that small era that happens, that entire era that happens within 2 episodes, was really fantastic. Both those numbers, I thought, really evoked the spirit of Hair and Godspell and Oh Calcutta and all those great those musicals, and so beautifully. I thought Cinco Paul did such a great job with how he wrote the music and how catchy the music is. There's something very familiar but also original at the exact same time about his music. It's really great.
You said it before, we have a number together that was just very simple and beautiful and came out really great. So I think that might have been my favorite. Everything else is kind of so big and flashy, and we got to do like a much more of an intimate, smaller number together, which was really fun.
Yeah, I really loved our number. I really think that whenever it's like such a simple number like that, the set days are always so magical because they just create this like really safe environment and everybody's like quiet. Like there's something very like
it's
almost
nice.
religious about it.
Yeah, it's like a reverent experience.
Yeah,
it's nice.
and it's just all about like the quietest and the connection. It's lovely, and it was very nice. Yeah.
I mean, it was super fun to put on my roller skates again. I did a little tapping to the basic level of tap that I know how to do. You know, we brought out the splits. My favorite was learning how to do trapeze. I'd never done trapeze before, so I was thrilled to get to go to some classes before we filmed and learn what I could before the filming date came up and put in everything that I possibly could learn in that time.
There were some really hard choices because in some ways, you know, you want them to be the ones that are most emblematic of the era too. So a lot of like the Jerry Herman musicals still had one foot in the golden age, I think. So they don't really get their due here. And boy, I really wanted to do an Ease On Down the Road number from The Wiz, and we there was a place for it to fit, but ultimately it didn't fit, and I was so bummed that we weren't able to do that. Maybe some other time we'll get to do it. But yeah, there are tough choices you have to make.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Once the barber wig goes on, forget it. I got to wear so many feathers. It was a blast. It's like my favorite kind of dress up.
For me, I just like the idea that she's not all bad. You know, I like characters that are not one or the other, but, you know, a mix of both. Complicated, like we all are. And I feel like she very much is sort of in that mold of like, do you trust her? Do you not trust her? Do you like, oh, maybe, I don't know. And then at the end, she comes through. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
No, but you're right. We are both victims. I mean, the whole town, it's a victim of Krat's power, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think like they do this amazing. Cinco and the writers do this incredible thing that I don't understand what it is. It's like when you watch a painter do underpainting when they're trying to like make a shadow look more realistic. They have all these nuances for these characters that make them pleasurable to watch if you are a huge musical theater fan. Like one of my favorites is like Elsie, or like little stupid things like this, or like, you know, jazz and this whole comment. It makes me giggle endlessly.
I jones on how smartly written the show is. And if you do know musical theater, all the references that are in all of the characters, and you know, they become an amalgam of musical theater characters, all laced in the 2 decades that we're covering of these musicals. So to me, I delight in the fact of finding all of those, applauding Cinco for them and getting them all into the episodes, and then for me trying to make as many references that I can on my own to bring those out in what he'd already written.
The writers in Cinco have brilliantly done is that if you don't know any of the source material, I think you can still go on this whole ride of the show because it is its own story. But if you are a musical theater fan and if you do know all the references, you're going to take all these other things away from it that you might not know. But no, I don't think you absolutely need to know.
I know in season 1, I think we were all a little afraid of like how much musical theater references we're gonna go over with the general public. Do you know what I mean? Because like we're all theater nerds and we got every joke. But like I'm like, is anybody else gonna get these jokes? You know, these very specific carousel jokes, these very whatever it was. And this year Cinco just sort of went like, we're going to double down. We're going to throw more stuff in. We're going to put in more songs. Like basically, it just feels like more in this season. And there's more Easter eggs and more kind of like in jokes that you and I are going to get because we're musical theater nerds, right? So I think for that group of viewers, they're going to really just be so excited and, you know, flip out. And for everybody else, it'll be like, it's still really funny.
I think the show is so entertaining as if you were just a person going to see musical theater. I think you'll love it. But I think if you do know musical theater, you're going to really love it.
If you don't like musical theater, you're actually, I think, going to maybe enjoy it more than the average person because it's poking fun at something while also, you know, worshiping at the altar of it. So it's really for everybody.
iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz.